Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amour de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hi everyone, welcome to Happy Talks. Today I'm super excited to introduce our guest today, Xander Reynolds. He is a fashion film director and men's relationship coach, and he's also the founder of Infinite Social, which is a community of men focused on building authentic relationships and living a more disciplined life. So please welcome Xander. Thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here with you both. I'm really excited.
Awesome. We're super excited to have you here. I love the topic of masculinity. I have lots of questions for you, but I'm just curious,
Yes.
What was your path to being a men's relationship coach and creating Infinite Social?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was quite interesting. I mean, it's a bit of a personal journey, I think, that I've been through, which I later came to realize is a similar journey that all men go on. So when I was younger, I was always quite good with people. I always had good people skills, and I always enjoyed being around people. But, you know, I had to suffer through a lot of the pain and hardship that humans just suffer through in terms of my relationships, you know, things not going right, being involved in toxic relationships, getting out of them, how do I meet new people, all of these just sort of issues that plague pretty much anyone. But for a guy, it's the guy's version of that, you know. So you wonder, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? You know, am I an attractive person? Can I influence people? Am I able to help? Am I a valuable person? So I had all these kind of questions in my head, and it was a real journey for me just to try and get these solved and get myself to a place where I was in being around high quality people, and I was doing my path and purpose and moving towards the things that I actually wanted to do. So on this journey, I realized that I could actually help other people along the way. I realized that I had these skills and that there were a lot of men in particular that I could help. And yeah, sort of authentically kind of came this way. I started meeting up with guys and just doing a bit of coaching, and I saw a lot of value from that, and that made me feel really good, and I really felt like I was giving back, and it was aligned with my purpose. So yeah, we just kind of went along with that and grew the community as much as possible, and I learned more every day from talking to new guys, and yeah, it's this really kind of authentic journey through discovering my own relationships, really thinking hard about masculinity, what that is, and then working with other guys to kind of get them to that level where they feel like they are authentic and they are who they really are, and a lot of their basic social anxiety or feelings of low self-worth are just removed. So yeah, it's been a journey, and yeah, really good so far.
That's amazing. I love what you're up to. And I'm just curious, what are some of the challenges that you were dealing with that kind of led you on that path of maybe not being fully able to express yourself or be your most authentic self? I guess what were the was it expectations, or was it, you know, pressure?
Yeah, that's a good question. And just that last statement you said there with expectations and pressure from society, I think that really was the challenge. And a lot of the guys that I work with, everybody I work with is valuable, and every man is valuable in his own way. And sometimes if you don't fit into the stereotype of what a man is in the mainstream media, or you don't have these personality traits, or you don't have certain material success around you, which would be essentially your, you know, what us guys sometimes obsess over and humans do, which is your quote unquote status. It's very easy to feel like you don't fit in, and it's very easy to feel like you're just a failure and you're not valuable as a man. So a lot of stuff just kind of drawing from, you know, do I look good enough? Do I look like an attractive person, like my physical appearance? Am I surrounded by people that think I'm interesting, and do I think they're interesting? You know, am I cool, or am I a loser? Don't stand out? And obviously you're going through life with these different situations going between them, and always trying to calculate in your brain, you know, is it right? Is it not right? So a lot of that was the pressure of society and, you know, mainstream media and trying to feed you to be a certain way. And yeah, I think a lot of stuff stemming from that in terms of my relationships too. So I've been on a long path to realize that the quality is in the relationship, and that's really, you know, building authentic relationship where you have a value trade back and forth is really where the value is. And of course, when we're younger, we get stuck in a lot of toxic or less than valuable relationships where two people are in it for something that's shallow, like validation, or a single serving thing. So it was really I had challenges trying to find the quality of relationships that I liked, where I was around the right people, and defining my own self-image and who I was as a man, and seeing my own value, I think was the biggest two challenges that I really went through.
Awesome.
So I know some of your background, so we might skip around. Alice, you might have to make sure I don't skip too hard. But I would be curious to know, I know both of us have had some experience looking at resources in the pickup area, right? And I'd be curious, having gone through that and had been taught very, I guess, mindsets that are not useful and not actually that good individually, and also for the results that they claim to have, there's tons of problems. So I'd be curious what your experience was with kind of those sorts of resources, as well as where you see yourself positioned in opposition to some of those things, or maybe what kind of things you see coming out of that aren't in line with what you believe or help people with.
Great. That's a really, really great question. So I'll just give you a bit about my personal background first, going through it, and then I'll progress on to the big divisions I see and some of the massive kind of pitfalls in that mindset. So for anybody watching who's unfamiliar with it, Donovan and I were both involved when we were younger and we were first starting getting into dating. I remember when I was younger, I had back again the issue is, do I fit in? Am I acceptable to people? I'm a valuable person. Obviously, for most guys, the most important thing that you want to find out, the role that you want to really satisfy is the girlfriend or a long-term relationship with a woman of quality, and feeling like you can fit in and you can provide value to her. So that search led me to get into all kinds of dating stuff. I got very thorough with all the materials that I read. In terms of the options that are available for men right now, I see that there is some basic kind of dating skills, which is just how to go on a date, how to run a date, how to work on yourself and, present better. And there's also this whole area of pickup, which is essentially how to meet a woman short-term, and usually how to get her to have sex with you, which is really quite short term. So the way that I see it actually comes from a biological point of view. This is what I later learned. I didn't learn this straight away. I got seduced into sort of the short term things. There's a lot of power and validation that lies in having sex with a woman and getting into being intimate with a woman, and that's sort of the alleged framework that someone can give you to do that. So I see a lot of guys get quite lost in that. And the biological example that I use to split these two up is, from a dating point of view, the way us humans are wired in terms of mating, is that there's two main strategies. There's short-term mating strategies and long-term mating strategies. And so a lot of the pickup stuff, a lot of the really short-term, get sex now, here's how you essentially groom a woman into finding you attractive right now so you can have sex with her straight away. They rely a lot on short-term mating strategies, which is usually quite brutal, and I've found to be not really realistic and not necessarily the way that we work as humans. When I was first getting into a lot of the dating stuff, when I was more doing the pickup side of stuff, I really found a lot of things that were just skewed. They were really skewed in terms of, this is, some brutal thing that women can do to men, and you've got to be brutal in return. And I'm really glad that I found out these things existed. But in reality, humans are much more geared towards longer term mating strategies, and we're much more geared towards, creating a relationship and being involved in a higher quality value exchange. So really the division I see between these two things, and again, there's so many faulty mindsets we can get in more in a sec, but the big division I see between these is the long-term mating strategy. So building an authentic relationship, existing in a community, providing what we would call, becoming what we would call a man of value, where you're kind of stepping up, you're providing value for others and you're helping. And this is, geared towards raising a child. The shorter term mating strategies, which are very, again, instant gratification and don't really account for a lot of longer term political kind of side effects. So I really found that a lot of the pickup stuff focuses on that short term. It's not good quality. It's very kind of, from a marketing point of view, they're very much just selling sex, and it's easy to prey on people that are in a low place and a vulnerable self-esteem, to pump them up and say, you can have sex with X amount of women right now, but you're not really fixing a lot of the core beliefs, and you're not really setting them up for success in the rest of their life. It's a very niche area, and I found that a lot of pickup would take socially awkward guys that didn't really have a lot of social skills, and it just teaches them how to trick people into thinking that they weren't socially awkward guys with a lot of social skills. So very kind of short term, and a lot of issues that I see in men that I work with because of this. How we're different from the Infinite Social is what we focus on is, again, the more longer term mating strategies. This is just from the dating point of view. A lot of our guys that we work with are also business orientated. They also worked on the social circle and just general boundaries and masculinity and how we work with that. So we like to take a much more holistic approach and focus on a lot more kind of universal principles that we think apply to everywhere in life and that will help you everywhere, instead of just building a very niche skill set that reality is maybe single serving. Our main kind of point that I guess would really drive it home is that we focus on being selfless and providing value, and then we identify selfish behavior and how that manifests in selfish groups, and how selfless behavior is high quality, high value, selfish behavior, low quality, low value.
Yeah, I totally resonate with what you're saying. And I think part of the issue is like our society just men get tied up in their self-worth of like, you're not a man unless you bang a lot of chicks, is kind of like this mentality.
Yeah. Like, or make a bunch of cash.
Right. We need to separate your self-worth. Does not necessarily have to mean you sleep with X amount of women or what, and then, having all these strategies to mate. But ultimately, I think quality relationships, obviously, I'm a fan of, versus like the short-term gratification. Yes. When I was in the dating world, a few years back, which was a game changer, I had gotten out of a 4-year relationship, and I was back in the dating world again. It like changed with all the apps and the technology, and I was like, oh my, this is fast paced, and a lot of people were in that instant gratification mode versus like I was wanting that deep, more authentic connection to have a longer term relationship. And I was just like, but it's just so easy now to just keep swiping until you find someone that's willing to go there with you. And I'm just curious about what your thoughts are about, like, actually the analogy that I thought of when I was back in the dating world was like casual sex or just like a quick fix fling is kind of like fast food. It's like that instant gratification where it's like, yeah, when you're hungry, you got to eat. It makes sense. But if you're always going to the fast food, relying on that all the time, you don't develop, like, it's not really nourishing your body. It's not nourishing your mind. It's not nourishing your well-being. And it's really not serving you in the long run. Like fast food, okay, if you haven't eaten a week, yeah, eat it. but if you haven't, like, if you're always counting on that for your source of nourishment, it's just probably not fulfilling. So I'd just be curious, how do you, for those men that have a difficult time separating out the two, they don't even want to give up that instant gratification because it's like what they know. How do you kind of share with them what the value of developing those more authentic relationships? Like, what's that process?
Yeah. Well, it's sometimes quite a challenge. Sometimes it's not. I would say I couldn't really put a percentage on this, but a percentage of the men that we work with intuitively get that, and they value relationships, and they want a relationship with a woman, or they at least want to have a few experiences before they, find a quality woman, and they're focused on quality. So our whole business only focuses on quality. We're not very interested in getting a guy laid 100 times. What's in the fabric of what we teach is not really, it doesn't really click out. Where that kind of comes from and why I think it's present is actually related to, I think, a deeper sort of issue with our whole society, which is volume, and how everything is moving towards this volume, especially with the internet and the amount of content that is coming out everywhere all the time. I really think that as a modern man and as a young man, that you are bombarded with signals for sex everywhere. All the time. Like, it's all through your phone, it's all through everything, social media, dating apps. It's very it's of course addictive, and it's like using a drug. When you log into Tinder or you log into online dating, you get that dopamine hit of validation. So it's very easy to build up a really high tolerance. So you need more and more and more and more and more. And if you combine that with society that's not actually telling men that they don't need more, and that it's about quality, and that they need to focus on the people that they actually care about, and creating relationships that mean something. If it's all focused on that, it creates a kind of downward spiral for these men, and they get stuck in this reality where they're unhappy, they're having physical contact with people, they're having sex, but they feel alone. They feel like nobody gets them. And the big point is that they often feel like because they are compromising their own value just for short-term gratification in terms of sex. So it's only so long that somebody can keep doing that for before you just feel completely empty inside. Obviously, from a spiritual point of view, that's terrible. You're just kind of imprinting on people again and again and again, and you're not taking any quality away from that. It's easy. If you're objectifying women, you're also objectifying yourself, because you're putting yourself in these positions again and again. So a lot of the guys that we work with, either we try and get them before they fall into that trap, and we really give them a lot of prep work to focus on their own value, and a concept that we like to call vetting. So actually reading the value of other people before you invest into a relationship with them. And if that's the guys that already get it, the same is true for guys that have maybe been more exposed to some of the short-term dating, sexual kind of experiences, except it's a bit more work to kind of massage those beliefs out. Really interesting concept, and Donovan and I have talked about this quite a bit, is that there's just a lot of misinformation for men out there in terms of the dating world. And there's a lot of people really kind of prying and preying on their lack of information and creating almost like a cult-like following and cult-like belief system. And so it's very dangerous. A lot of what we try and do is almost like a deprogramming from a lot of the main pickup and dating kind of cult type advice that's out there that doesn't really help men, that is run by men that are still damaged or still haven't really reached that level of authenticity required to really teach full masculine balance and have an authentic relationship. So a lot of what we do is just try to chip away at those beliefs that they've been falsely implanted in. What happens is typical cult type situation. They're lonely, they're isolated, they don't have a lot of friends. Along comes a cult, a dating group of guys saying, hey, we can get you laid, we can get you, with women, we're going to introduce you to other guys that do it. They stay in that for quite a while, but what they're actually doing, they're thinking that they're away from society and that they're escaping social conditioning. But what's actually happening is they're being brainwashed by this new kind of way of thinking that really has no basis or foundation to it, and is really just a bottomless pit. So it's a bit of a process. We have several programs that we run guys through. One of our main programs is about 12 weeks. And throughout that time, we really just try to do a lot of core belief work to deprogram them from that and get them focused on what they actually value, what they value as a man, and really get them back connected with really the person who they were when they grew up and the person that their parents raised them as.
Wow. Beautiful.
Yeah, I have a couple, just like a little bit more color to add to that, which is
cool.
that is very much my experience to a lesser degree in terms of, there was a time in my life where I was like, I don't really understand how to start a relationship. I don't understand what women are looking for. I don't understand what valuable actions are, or like things that I should be doing. And I started looking at resources, and like you mentioned, there's so many of these resources that teach things that not only give you the wrong long-term approach, but that they start impacting your worldview. So you mentioned it before, but there was so many resources that I saw that were saying like, here is the way that women think. Here's what they care about. Here's all they're going to do. Which was dehumanizing in itself. Like the view that was given out was dehumanizing. And then it made it easier to digest some of these like tactics of like, well, if this is how these people look at the world, then I guess the only way to act is in this short-term mating way. Cause like they don't care either. And like, there's so much of this in like the dating, like pickup world that it's insane. It's insane to me, honestly, because I had the exact same experience where like, I sort of went through the motions of building a facade of value, or like the facade that like, I'm a good person with a good life. So like you should be attracted to me. And it's so wild to be on the other end of it, on the other side of it, and see like, or you could just build a good life. Like, instead of building the facade, you could just build the things. It's almost just as much work. Like you can build out the type of life that makes you into an attractive person. But I guess what I wanted to hone in on is it's crazy because it does prey on these people that are in a position that don't really know what's going on, and it starts building a mindset that compounds, and then you get in like there are groups of men who end up fueling each other with these ideas that don't work in the long term. And maybe there's a very, very small portion that feel fulfilled, but I would guess, and my experience talking to men is like the vast, vast majority feel very unfulfilled, whether or not they're able to get the short-term tactics to work for them, which many aren't. Many aren't able to even build that facade. So it's just crazy to me. I don't have any real point besides to say that like it is wild to me what kind of resources are out there and the skewed amount of like what is actually useful and what can help you build a nice life compared to what is out there about like you were saying, that's just sold with sex of like, you can get laid quick. And like the balance is so bad.
It's very true. And I've gone through quite a lot of the marketing side. I obviously working in film and being a director, I've been working in marketing and advertising for quite a while. So one of the big hobbies of mine was going through all of the pickup products and pulling apart the marketing and seeing what the promise is. And when I started doing that, it really touched on exactly what you're saying before, which is it's all worded like, I'm going to teach you the high value signals that indicate you're a high value guy, and how to have high value body language and how to have high value vocal projection. Whereas in reality, if you just focus on your actual value and improve that, you'll have those things anyway. And it doesn't, yes, there's like a percentage in there where you can always learn to present better, but if you don't have the value, you can only fake that for so long, you know, and you're never actually going to have long-term success, because if you invest all your time into, like you said, it's just as hard almost. If you invest all your time into faking it, you could just invest it into actually building your value. And that's really the reality of what's going on.
Yeah, I found that for me personally, because I had like mixed results messing with that stuff and some of the tactics, and it's for the reason that the value underneath wasn't there. So sometimes I was able to project it and sometimes I wasn't. Sometimes I was like, and anyway, I found that when I kind of gave up on that, when I was like, okay, even when this is working, this is unfulfilling. And I just started working on my life and like, okay, what do I want out of my life? What am I trying to build? Like, what do I want for me? Then all of a sudden I didn't have to ever think about any of that other stuff ever again. Like, I'm in a relationship now, but when I was dating, like I was just focused on my own projects and doing my own stuff. And the relationship part just like opened up naturally. And I just wish that more people knew that. Like, obviously it's easy to see on the other end. Like once you're in a good position, it's easy to see, but I just wish that was more known.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a part of what we try and do with the Infinite Social is to give that guys that shortcut so they don't have to get involved with all that stuff. Because really what they do, what these pickup companies do in a lot of that whole area is that they take a guy who's socially awkward and doesn't have any social skills, and they're like, okay, let's learn how to cold approach people in the middle of the daytime in a mall and get her phone number. And of course the guy's not used to that. Of course he can't do that. And so he's going to like force himself through like this immersion therapy to try to like get over it and become some guy that actually can approach a woman, but he's just not that guy. And that's okay, because nobody really is. And you don't need to be that guy at all. But the best advice for that guy would be to just start getting involved in more hobbies or things that he enjoys, and slowly putting himself out there more, you know, even going to like a rock climbing class or something that is on the edge for him. He's still going to improve himself. And there's not all this pressure to become some super smooth sales ninja that can approach a woman at any time. And where I think they get them is that they create this whole propaganda machine that just pumps out this information that says, you know, do you want to be an instructor? Get this level of, you know, game. They sell the game element of like, you know, it's a game, like play the game, win the game. And so it hasn't really progressed from literally a video game style. They've kept that all the way through, and they're not actually doing authentic work. They're not actually focusing on what would make that person happier, what would make them healthier, and what would make them a more rounded, better person.
Yeah. Great.
I think for me too, that goes back to the framing thing, right? Where like we were talking about how people's mindsets get so warped. And I think that's one of the main ways that it happens is like, it is viewed as a game. One of the main, like, you know, founding books is called The Game, right? Like, and when you think about your relationships as a game, it just puts you in such a weird mind space. And like, you know, if you want to think of points as every time you get laid, like you're just in such a weird place. And it does not put you in an authentic place to build relationships at all.
I totally agree. And from our point of view, we have a framework that we use in all of our programs that we developed, and it's called the social economics framework. And so from our point of view, if you're involved in, say, a pickup community, or there's other communities as well that are low quality and low value, some of the get rich quick communities that, any currency that isn't really a currency, we say that essentially like if you use the comment of how many women you had sex with, that's the main currency for them. Well, that's incredibly low value currency because its value only exists inside that community. So once you leave that community and you start interacting with anyone else, no one cares who you had sex with. We always use the saying, no one cares about your sex life, because they don't. It's your sex life. It's, you can share, like, you can tell your one buddy, or, if that's fine, but there's no reason to post about it on the internet. There's no reason to bring everyone else into that, because it's just all ego. And, it shows the opposite. It shows if you're like, look at me, I had sex. It's like, well, good for you, mate. That's kind of in the biology of humans. I get it if it's a struggle, but you don't need to be so public. You don't need to be sharing it everywhere. So yeah, I think it creates this really, it distorts the market if you're inside this community, which is essentially a cult, and you're just generating this fake currency that is only traded between other members of the community. Say you leave the pickup community, you realize it's terrible. We find a lot of guys are just socially bankrupt because they haven't been working on themselves. They haven't been doing anything but pickup. And so they leave and their bank account is depleted because they don't have any value except for the amount of women you have sex with. We always like to joke, you say, you can't apply for a job with, you don't list the women you've had sex with on your resume, and you don't go to meet someone's parents and say, hi, my name's Xander, I've had sex with, 300 women, doesn't matter. No one cares, no one cares at all. So it's just really, it's really, really damaging and really, distorted. And it's a niche and not everybody's in that. And a lot of the ways that they manipulate men is they twist that and they say, you're above social conditioning. Like you don't need to care about everyone else because it's all about you. And it's just about, this bubble that you're in, and no one else gets it, but you do because you know how to approach women. It's a very toxic mindset, and it's terrible. And it creates a lot of fake ego in guys. And a lot of what we do is just trying to kind of grind them down to who they really are and take away, all of that. Because if you've been involved in a pickup community, you're pumped up on validation, and you're not really used to someone who just doesn't care, because you're just pumping up their own validation. And so we really like to try and introduce them to universal principles and try to show them what universal values are that will apply to all areas of your life, that everybody finds valuable, that will actually improve your value long term and isn't conditional to the group that you associate with.
That's awesome. I'm just curious, what I see a lot is in just the masculine culture is that men aren't allowed to express emotions, or they're not developing themselves on an emotional level. So therefore, they don't have the skill set to develop an emotional connection with a woman or a partner. And that leads to the sense of unfulfillment or loneliness or depression. And what are your thoughts about like the emotional aspect? Is that incorporated in your infinite social program, I guess?
Yes. Yes. That's a really good question, Alice. I'm actually doing a show at the moment, which will be released in the future, where I'm interviewing models and different women that are of high quality and that work with me for my fashion stuff. I'm getting their opinion on dating, and the show is just kind of getting the top things that they like and they look for in a guy. And every single woman I interview says emotional intelligence is like her number one thing that she finds the most attractive. And I'm sure you're aware of it too, of course, right? Yeah. And of course, it's the truth for me too. If I was talking about a woman, it's so crucial. And so a lot of men, I think, it's a very interesting point here, because I feel that everybody, both women and men, we're in a very weird transitionary time right now. We're breaking out of some of the old loops of the narratives that men were in. We're moving to something new, and that's very uncertain for a lot of people, and it's very unsettling. So a lot of guys are still locked in this rigid masculinity of back in the day, where they feel like if they express their emotions, that they're going to be perceived as a woman and they're going to be perceived as weak. When in reality, that's like a core strength that will actually win everybody over, including women, because that's one of the most, of course, valuable things you can have is emotional intelligence to be successful in your life. So a lot of guys they just haven't really thought about it. They haven't really thought that they're maybe lacking in social intelligence or emotional intelligence. They haven't really invested into it. And I think that's because, again, we're still stuck in some of the old previous ways of being, which is, from the 50s or such, which is the father would not be nice to the child essentially, and need to really discipline them and really put them through hardship, which in a way is actually something that I believe our generation is missing now. And this is why we're in such a transitionary period, because you have these traditional forms of masculinity, which was great. Like back in the day, you would actually spend time with your dad, and he would take you like fishing and replicating a very natural biological phenomenon where you would maybe go out hunting back in the well back in the day, and actually spending bonding time with other men. So I think this is really missing. And I think a lot of men don't really know what it's like to be a man and to be emotional around other men and to really also be disciplined and goal focused. They didn't really have that. A lot of the guys that we speak to, almost 90% of the guys I speak to, they were raised without a father, or the father was a bit more passive in their relationship. And so the mother really took over the raising of the child, and they didn't really get a lot of quality time with their dad. And their dad wasn't really didn't really have a lot of the boundary setting abilities that they're really looking for to cultivate with masculinity. So I think guys are really, really confused at the moment, because we have a lot of stuff out there which is telling us to be more emotional and step into our feelings and emotions. And some guys are getting it. Some guys are shaming them for that. But then as well, there is this issue, which is an issue of our entire generation, which is that we're very instant gratification focused, and we're very soft. We don't have a lot of, we live in potentially probably obviously the best time in history that's ever existed. Everything is very comfortable for us. Everything is very safe. Everything is very easy. And so because of that, we have a lot of apathy, and we can be quite self-centered. And so I view that as an issue with humans in general, not just necessarily men. But because of that, men are being pushed into this. And it's a very confusing time for men. A side note to this, which I think is quite interesting, is that we put in our Infinite Social Facebook group the other day, a friend of mine posted a comment about if men would be attracted to a trans woman, and what their opinion would be that, and if they could date one, and what internally went on from them. And the debate that sparked inside the group, I thought was very fascinating, and I thought it really indicated exactly what I was sort of describing here, is this very transitional period that we're moving into, whereas gender is really being focused on and really being talked about, and gender roles are being brought up and questioned, and that's threatening a lot of people, and a lot of people are digging in on either sides and really fighting for what they believe is right. So I think the whole period is very transitional, and it's a very interesting time.
Yeah, definitely.
I was thinking as you were talking, I think there is some confusion too, or at least there has been in my experience, the difference between like being more vulnerable and emotional regulation, right? So in the past, and I've been doing like emotion work the past couple of years to try to like get more in touch with this stuff. But in the past, when I heard stuff like that, I would think of it as like, I don't want to like have these giant displays of emotion. Like, that's not what I want. Like, I don't want to break down crying. I don't want to freak out and fight someone in a parking lot. Like, these are not the ways that I want to display emotion. Everybody's telling me to be more like emotional and open up and be more vulnerable, but like, I don't understand. So at least for my journey, it was an important piece to recognize that like being more emotional or opening up emotions does not have to mean that you stop regulating your emotions. It's more about like including them as part of your life and part of the process, as opposed to just shoving them down, which I also did like for a very long time. I'm just like, cool, I feel kind of sad. That's going like way, way out the window, and I'm just going to focus on wherever the next problem is. But that's just something I thought of as you were talking. That's been an important distinction for me in this particular conversation.
I can definitely relate to that. And I feel like I had almost the reverse. Well, what I really went into is I started out, and I've always been a very emotional guy. I've always been very emotionally attuned and I guess sensitive. And so growing up, I always got along with women well, and I got along with other men too, but I sometimes felt like I was a bit weak. Sometimes I felt like I didn't have enough of a masculine kind of traditional like boundary setting kind of energy. And so when I was about 19, I realized that I could do something about that, and I could get into self-development, and I could really confront all of my beliefs and issues that kept me being like in this boy type state. So I really induced that on myself, and I really went through a very hard kind of, I've moved cities and countries like about 4 or 5 times, and I've really like pushed it through work and really put myself on the edge to try and grow. But during this time, I really witnessed a death of, and it wasn't a death of the emotional stuff. It wasn't like shutting out the emotions. It was an ability to like stand forward in them and be present with them and be still attached to them. And what I really discovered was it's about like being emotionally, it was actually me being sensitive was the best superpower that I had, because it was actually way better for me to read different emotional cues in other people. And as you mentioned, to regulate my own emotions and to not really be afraid of them. So counterintuitively, I think a lot of guys, would really feel this, like they're a bit weak and they need to step into their masculinity more and be more confrontational and sometimes even aggressive and, not afraid of conflict. But when I was leaning into that and when I really started experimenting with that, it was really just being comfortable with my emotions, comfortable with extreme emotions coming up in me and in other people, and knowing that, it's a wave and it will pass. So yeah, really interesting point I think you had there too.
Yeah, that resonates with me a lot. Side note, this guy is always, every time I talk to him, he's like in a completely different country. Every time.
Yeah.
Where are you now?
Yeah. I'm in Berlin right now. Yeah. Yes.
A lot of empathy for you guys, because I get that it must be challenging to kind of navigate, like women do want a strong, confident man, but at the same time we want an emotionally intelligent man. And so which way do you go? Or it's like, how much is too much? And how am I doing it? Yeah. So it's like, how do you navigate that? I'm at a loss. I'm not sure what to tell you.
Yeah. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. Essentially, what I've come to learn is it's again like a bit of it's like a parrot. Two things can be right at once. So in one hand, you really want to listen to women and you want to listen to everything they say because they're an expert on what they like and what they don't like and how they feel. Yet at the same time, you can't totally listen to women because they can't always describe it as well. Like if a woman's saying, I want a guy who's sensitive, but not, like, you can't ask the woman, okay, can you rate that on a scale of 10? How sensitive is, what I've come to learn is that, you have to have an intuitive feeling for it yourself. But a lot of that intuition comes from being in experience and then talking to your female friends and saying, hey, I'm confused by this situation and this woman's behavior. What do you think was going on for her? Why do you think she felt that? And then the woman can tell you, because there's also this layer on top of it, which is just that people are people, and people are random. People are selfish sometimes. People are, sad. People are people. You don't know what you're going to get. And everybody's more or less developed than another person. So you really don't know what you get. And often gender kind of doesn't have anything to do with it. So I found having support with different female friends and asking them, female friends that were also into self-development and that were also good people that really tried to look at their relationships and see how they could improve as well. By having a good support network of those people, that's really how I found to actually understand what it is that women want, what they're looking for, and how you can actually provide it for them. Bit of a counterintuitive. You've got to really listen to women, and at the same time also you've got to know that intuitively there's a part of women that women will never understand because you're the man experiencing it through your eyes, essentially.
What are your thoughts? What was different between, because I was dating in my early 20s, and then I was in a long-term relationship of 4 years, and then I was dating again a few years ago. And I remember I shifted my way of being from dating, from being like, oh, does he hit all my check marks, to being like, the second time around, in between that time period, I had done a lot of personal development and learned a lot about myself. And I kind of went in with the attitude of just, being curious and not having expectations that this is going to be the one, or he needs to this check mark and this check mark. But actually just deciding that I'm just going to have a fun interaction with another human being. If it sparks chemistry, great. If it doesn't, then that's okay. And actually, basically I went on maybe 15 dates before I met my current partner. And I remember that I had a good conversation with all 15. I enjoyed. I wasn't romantically attracted to all 15 of those guys, but I remember I would totally love to have future conversations. I might not want a relationship, But, you know, I was always open to creating a friendship if they were open to it. But for a lot of those men, they were like, that's weird. They were like, pass. Except a couple. I made a couple friends out of that dating situation. Is that even like an idea that is presented to men? Like, you know, have you ever tried like being friends first? Or is that like, you got to go for the kill, you got to go for the relationship kind of a thing? Yeah.
It's an idea that I'm constantly trying to introduce men to, and that really a concept that I think is really responsible for my success is that what we really say to guys, and our framework works for dating, but it also works for any business type skills or relationships you want to build. Any relationship, any type of relationship, this will work for in any field, any sphere. Essentially what we get guys to focus on is to look for the value and to focus on the value exchange between two people. So when you go in, what our main thing is that every interaction is a negotiation of sorts, right? So anytime you're engaged in a conversation, it's just a negotiation of some degree. Sometimes you're going to be negotiating more emotional type currency. Sometimes it's a straight up business interaction, and it's financial currency, actual money. A whole range of different types of currencies you can exchange. But really, if you focus on the value of the person that you're dealing with, the quality, the compatibility. From there, once you've gained that information, you can negotiate a relationship that is the most ideal for both of you. So if you're sitting down at a date and you're vetting your partner, or you're going and meeting a new male friend and you're vetting your a buddy, anytime you interact with someone new, you want to take on the role of an investor. Like, you're going to invest potentially into a relationship with them. So you want to do your due diligence and find out if there is compatibility, if it is going to work out. And that's something that doesn't, sex is only a small element of that. And so a lot of the issues we find guys have is they're only focused on sex. Whereas, as you know, women don't see it that way. The market value for just sex for a woman is nowhere near as high as it is for men, because men have been brought up and they've been conditioned to think that, sex is on a pedestal and it's something that you can't get. And as a man, especially a straight man, I believe, are like we're the only people that can't just get sex whenever we want. And we're fed that in our conditioning. I've actually been looking a lot at James Bond and seeing how they've actually done that. So pretty much every guy, you're force fed this thing that you've got to be this guy that can get sex whenever. And when the more sex you have, the more of a man you are. And that's really the way it works. And so because of that, we have a gross market distortion where we only focus on sex. It's all about sex. And like you're describing before, most guys are like, well, I can't take a friendship deal with you because it means that I lost out in sex and I'm a loser and I'm not more of a man. So if I took a friendship deal with you, it would mean that it's just reaffirming that I'm a loser and that, I'm not attractive. Whereas in reality, sometimes you're very attracted to people in like a platonic way and it just doesn't really work out. Or I've been in many relationships where it started sexual and it just didn't go anywhere. And we're just like, well, this is a great friendship and let's just leave it at that. So I think that you really got to be open to any type of value exchange. If you can train yourself to see the value, to see what the value exchange is with each person and how you can make sure that you're building a relationship on the value exchange that's the most beneficial, no matter what that is, then you're going to be successful in your relationships, and they're going to be authentic. They're going to provide value easily back and forth, and it's not going to be a strain.
That's great. Awesome. Well, Xander, we really appreciate you being on our show, and it's been a pleasure talking with you. Is there anything you'd like to plug before we wrap up today?
I think that's it. If any guys are watching this video and they want to get involved, you can find us on Facebook. It's probably the best place to get involved. We have quite a large Facebook group where the community mainly lives. They could go to facebook.com/groups/infinite social, and you'll find the group. And you can jump on there. That's probably the best way to get involved with us.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And so thank you again for being on our show.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.